It's a typical David versus Goliath story. We've talked about them a lot on this show. Sometimes they have good outcomes for the small business, and a lot of times, unfortunately, it doesn't. So what can work for your company? Let's hear from two people who have first-hand knowledge from both sides of this coin. Shazi Visram is founder and CEO of Happy Family, the company responsible for brands like Happy Baby. She knows what it's like to go against the big brands. And marketing expert Jeffrey Hayzlett is an author and the head of the Hayzlett Group. And he was also the CMO of Kodak. Great to see both of you guys.
Well, good to be here. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
You know, I was just in the airport in Aspen, Colorado, and when you land there, there is a big sign from Coldwell Banker. And it just kind of brought home the point to me that these small companies may, you know, they say they do better sort of finding the good houses, do better with customer service perhaps, but they will never have the money of a Coldwell Banker to buy that huge sign in the airport. And you experienced the same thing, Shazi, where, you know, you were a small baby food company competing against companies like Gerber. So
Yep.
how do you get the word out?
Well, I mean, I think you have to know your consumer, right? So mothers really don't like being marketed to. And, you know, if you're looking potentially for a very luxury boutique home, potentially you might want to go and find a luxury boutique-oriented agency.
But you don't have tons of money, particularly
Nope.
in the beginning. Now you're about 100 million in sales, right? So,
Yep.
but in the beginning, you don't have money to go hire other moms, and so you're kind of crossing your fingers and hoping that people are going to start talking about you.
Well, so when we launched about 7 years ago. It's almost our 7th birthday, and we did $115,000 in sales our first year. So we've grown tremendously since then. We focused on PR, and we said, you know what? We want other moms to know about what we're doing. Let's get editorial so that there's coverage about this new innovation, because there really hadn't been any innovation in baby food since the 1930s. So we had a story.
Well, Jeffrey, I want to bring you into this because Shazi was doing something different, right? In a world of baby food, which wasn't marketed as organic and wasn't organic, she created something new, solving a problem for a lot of moms out there. How do you... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, but she did a lot of the same things these guys need to do, and that's the word of mouth. And that's to do great service, give a great job, and do the things you need to. You know, and the real estate business is really built on trust and who you know, and knowing those properties, knowing the area, and being able to do it. Don't forget, you said this, David versus Goliath. David won with a well-placed, very missile-like shot against those big guys, and that's what businesses need to do, especially small businesses.
So, Jeffrey, I want to ask you, when you were CMO of Kodak, how much did you pay attention to small businesses who were getting into your space? Or were you just so big that they didn't even hit your radar?
Well, it depends on what the business is. In the B2B space, without question, we did, because that was much more hands-on. In the consumer space, you know, we could blow it out, and I could spend, you know, billions, quite frankly, billions of dollars in advertising or hundreds of millions in advertising and just blow it and carpet bomb things. But that still doesn't make it happen. The product has to be real. It has to be good, just like the baby food has to be good. In this case, Sterling Peak, which sounds like they're doing a great job, they have to do great service, and I think that's what differentiates them from the big guys, you know, from those big block super realtors that are out there. And I think that's the key part they want to remember is don't be like them. Be yourself. By being yourself, you can differentiate and you can have that specialness that makes people want to come to you.
It's time now to answer some of your business questions. Shazi and Jeff are with us once again. The first one is about finding advisors to run your business.
We were wondering if the experts could give us some advice about how to build and how to structure an advisory board for a small to medium-sized company.
You know, Jeff, I like this question because we talk a lot about how important it is to have advisors, but how do you get people who are really engaged in your business, and do you have to give them anything for it?
Well, you should. I serve on a lot of boards as an advisor and as a board member, and one of the things you want to do is make sure you take care of the advisors. Now, maybe as a small business, you got to start and just buy them lunch. That might be part of it, and sometimes it's just taking someone to lunch. But look for people who are experts in the areas that you're deficient. That's really where you want. So if you need more help on finance, go find the best finance person. If you're looking to go into newer markets, on the vertical markets, look for people who really have a good hold on that market or a good leader in that market market can introduce you.
Shazi, do you have an advisory board?
We do.
And do you give them anything in return?
Yeah, so initially I started with very little knowledge about the food industry, and I knew that I needed to attract world-class people to build a world-class business. So I reached out to entrepreneurs who had been there and done that before me, as well as specifics in the fields where I was looking for help. So pediatric nutrition, a pediatrician, a microbiologist, a food scientist, a sales strategist, finance.
But to get them involved and excited, you gave them
have to
equity
ask.
or...
So we've always been pretty generous with our equity, because I feel like when people have a vested interest in seeing you succeed, they really do want to help you succeed. And a lot of people do just like to give help, but the two together.
Is it scary to give equity to an advisor who
may or may not
be helpful? Yeah.
Well, I mean, you can always have equity that vests over time, right? So you can give them a portion just to get kick-started, and then you can see how the relationship goes. And for instance, we had one who was a phenomenal advisor. His name's Seth Goldman. He's the co-founder of Honest Tea. And he was probably 3 or 4 years ahead of where I was at the time when we started. And now he's the head of this, you know, multi-hundred-million-dollar business partnered with Coca-Cola, and I've been able to get advice from him at every stage of the growth. And so he became an initial advisor, but now he's on my board of directors because he's managed to be relevant to me as an advisor.
Okay, let's move on to the next question. This is about getting the most for your money.
We try to get placements in magazines and visibility at trade shows. We're looking for some metrics that we can use to judge the success of those placements and make sure we're getting the most out of our money.
It's interesting, right? Internet advertising, it's so easy. You get an ROI right there. If you're doing a magazine ad, it's a little bit harder unless you have a code and you don't know if everyone's using it. So how do you figure out your ROI on that?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. We really don't do very much print advertising because you don't know the ROI, and you don't know if someone's passing by your ad, and you don't know if they're going to use your coupon or if a friend's going to get it. We rely on online for metrics, and it's the best. Now, if you're doing a trade show and you're selling something at the trade show, at the end of the show you can find out, hey, did we write enough orders to cover the cost of the show? But, you know, it all depends on what you're looking to do with your marketing efforts.
So, Jeffrey, you wrote the book on marketing. I mean, is it worth it for a small business to do kind of this old school magazine marketing, TV marketing?
Absolutely. Old school still works. There's nothing wrong with the old way of doing things. You just got to figure out what the blend is. And there is a way to tell the ROI. You change the phone number. You change the response. You put a code on it. You make a special offer. There's lots of ways to be able to do it. You can get that feedback. And one of the biggest things that most businesses fail to do is ask, how did you hear of me? And that's a great way to be able to find out what is working, because even those display ads aren't working like they used to. In fact, we're starting to call that old media as well.
Okay, let's move on to the next question. It's from Mary, and she wrote us, we're a small business selling a consumer product to many websites and catalogs. We've been approached by Amazon to sell directly to them, but we don't want to create a price issue that may discourage our current accounts. Is there any data that can support whether Amazon creates incremental sales versus the cannibalization of current ones? Jeff, any ideas?
Well, I think you really want to make sure that you offer two different kinds of services. If you're pushing it through to Amazon, make sure that you're going to be giving up a lot there. So make sure that you're doing it at different price levels. And so if someone's going to be getting more service, that's the differentiation. You won't get that on the Amazon side. You'll get an experience that's very good, but you won't get it like you're doing it locally.
What do you think, Shazi?
I totally agree. Create a differentiated product so that you're not getting in trouble from your retailers at different price points. For instance, we sell multi-packs on Amazon, and they really work well with Amazon Mom because they have a subscribe and save program. So we're moving a lot of volume through that program, and it's phenomenal for building the brand and getting product out, but it's also not hurting our other business because they're sort of complementary.
All right, well, Shazi and Jeff, great to see both of you guys. Appreciate you coming on the show. Thumbs up to you, too.